The developers have been going pretty crazy with the last few patches, so let's look at the current meta for 2025. A glitch within the Afghanistan region seems to have reverted the server to an old patch roughly 1,000 years in the past. Aside from gains in the tech tree, commenters have noticed that the nation looks almost unrecognizable from a society from the Middle Ages, with human rights, religious freedom, and women all receiving heavy nerfs. Moderators within the server are currently split between keeping women as second-class citizens or whether to further rework them into third-class citizens. The US server has so far seen some of the biggest sweeping changes made in the latest update, mostly due to a recent change in its moderation team. The new moderators have made it a priority to greatly expand the border security tower defense minigame, provide substantial buffs to players in the oil and gas industry, and roll back the previous team's changes of the social system to an earlier patch. The moderators have also made it a priority to vault certain features usually associated with the government system, and restrict tighter role limits on how many government jobs are available. Players have long complained that content bloat within the government has made annual subscriptions too expensive. However, economics mains don't expect that the majority of players will see a discount after these changes are made. The US server also appears to be ignoring the game's community mission to keep emission levels below the 2-degree milestone. Data miners believe that failing this mission will lead to exciting new gameplay features, which will greatly increase the frequency and intensity of extreme world events, make some regions uninhabitable, and greatly intensify the aforementioned border security tower defense minigame. Along with this, the US server is now increasing prices of all microtransactions from outside the country. This decision seems to be part of a wider strategy for the United States, as it continues to respec back into its previous isolationist build. Many players speculate that this will likely see the US become less meta-relevant going into the next few patches, as it'll lose its synergy bonuses with other A-tier nations. Taking a step back to the global level, it appears as if apathy creep has shifted the political meta to be less democratic. A heavy contributor to this shadow nerf to democracy has been the player base's shift in information gathering. In previous patches, players would refer to the top 500 experts who main specific subclasses. Currently, however, most players now choose to receive patch notes from whoever gives them the news that aligns with their favorite in-game faction. This is likely because the journalist subclass has mostly been relegated to the entertainment skill tree, which has made it harder for players to consume accurate information. Many players now believe that democratic nations have now entered the vibes meta. This has usually involved dumping skill points from the policy tree and speccing much harder into entertainment. Political mains have now started moving away from presenting inspiring visions for their region, as this is now hard countered by hyping up niche social issues. Moving on to humanity's collective tech tree, and the initial beta of AI bots have seen mixed reactions among the player base. Players have long requested AI which would be able to streamline grindy activities such as cooking or cleaning. However, the bots thus far have only seemed to replace leisurely activities such as writing or painting. This has caused an uproar among the artist subclass, which has always suffered from restrictive role limits. Analysts suggest that most roles within the game will likely be taken over by AI bots eventually, which will almost certainly shift the average gameplay experience into something completely unrecognizable. The developers have yet to comment on whether this will lead to long-anticipated quality of life updates, or if the player base will get to enjoy an exciting new cyberpunk-inspired content drop. The PvP zone in Gaza is still experiencing serious debuffs to everyone inside. The conflict appears to be between players who want the server reverted to its pre-beta state, while others argue that the server was much better in the initial alpha. Although 90% of players from both sides would like the server to be set to peaceful, moderators from participating factions have refused to make these changes. Meanwhile, the Australian server seems to be an out-of-bounds region where developers experiment with wildlife assets, and the entire African region seems to have been neglected by the developers entirely. In terms of the economic system, players themselves have expressed their own concerns at the current business meta, which has concentrated more of the game's premium currency into fewer people than ever before. Casual players have argued that the developers have become too willing to tailor the game experience to benefit these whales, at the expense of the majority of the player base. Although players have been given more agency than ever before to choose and respec their classes to be more meta-relevant, a player's earning potential is still mostly determined by their starting role. The billionaire class has long been controversial since its introduction. However, the developers have yet to comment on how it might address these extreme cases of power creep. Moving over to Korea, and the region still remains split between the North and South factions. The Northern faction seems to be going for an extremely unoptimized build, dumping all quality of life features in order to put all of its points into boosting nuclear development. The South, meanwhile, seems to be boosting their own entertainment means to the wider player base, presumably to achieve an ultimate cultural victory. Although well on their way, the South's extremely low respawn rate is expected to see them drop off in a future patch, unless they can respec their society in time. Looking to the future, the developers still seem to be working on the upcoming Mars DLC, which has been rumored to be in development for several decades. Many players speculate that its release date has been pushed back dramatically following the terribly reviewed Pandemic World event. Supposedly, the developers expected the player base to be able to complete the Pandemic event in only a few months, but underestimated how players would react to the social distancing mechanic. We also have another protracted conflict within the Ukrainian server, which has seen the nation fight for its sovereignty with its particularly aggressive neighbor. The meta implications of such a takeover would likely lead to aggressive nations doubling down on expansionist strategies, and increase the spawn rate of conflict events around the world. With the US nation shifting to its more lone wolf playstyle, the European mega-faction has been scrambling to rearm itself, in case the US protection buff expires. With the Russian faction slowly falling out of the meta, many players have wondered whether the EU alliance will soon be buffed to an S-tier superpower, a title which is currently only held by China and the United States. Other meta-analysts believe that India will eventually be considered an S-tier nation in an upcoming patch due to its boomy playstyle and expansive tech tree. The UK is still yet to see a comeback after dominating the meta up until the World War I and II seasonal events, as well as its player base deciding to nerf itself with the Brexit update in patch 20.16. Meanwhile, China is still preparing for its ultimate endgame build. Historian mains believe that it's been turtling for such a play for the past 4,000 years, so meta experts suggest that their build should be coming online any day now. Last up, we have bug fixes, which notably includes immortality potions not spawning from polar bears as intended, and a bug which deactivates a player's legs if they sit down for too long. The developers have also stated that they're currently looking into the balance patch of the election mechanic, after players have complained that they've become too pay to win. It's speculated that the spaghetti code for the democracy mechanic has long made this a particularly difficult bug to address. That concludes everything for the current patch, but if we missed anything, be sure to let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.